Donnie and Dolly, the team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All right, it is Tuesday. Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox, by the way.
It's Friday, by the way.
Pardon me, it is Friday.
It's hopping.
An old man moment there. It is Friday. I'm already getting ripped for the poll question. We haven't even presented it yet. I tweeted it out yesterday, something along those lines.
Last night.
Yes, yesterday.
That's how this market works, man.
Pardon me?
That's how this market works. They don't see the end of things. They just rip right away.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, then, yeah.
Today's guests, including Thomas Drance, champing at the bit to get on this show.
Chomping.
Brought to you by Langley Chrysler. Enjoy no-hassle 3-day returns and 30-day exchanges on all used vehicles. Tuesday. Where's my head at? So you can make sure what you get is just right for you. Don't just love your car. Love buying it at langleychrysler.com. Canucks let go of 4 scouts from their amateur department. Here to talk about that and all matters Canuck from The Athletic, Thomas Drance. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. Good morning to you.
What do you make of these moves, letting go for amateur scouts?
Yeah, industry reaction is not surprised, right? We all expected there to be significant changes within Canucks hockey operations, particularly their scouting operations. And I think in the wake of 4 dismissals, including some relatively senior cross-checking amateur staff, guys like Pat Conacher, who've worn a ton of hats during his time with the organization, worked on an administrative basis in the American League, has been deeply involved in college side recruitment. And then, Derek Richard, of course, is a highly senior cross-checking scout. Mm-hmm. I think there's a sense that this was coming. We knew that there were going to be changes, particularly when you look at the personnel that Rutherford has assembled. Patrik Allvin has an amateur scouting background. He's now the general manager. Assistant general managers Derek Clancy and Cami Granato both have scouting backgrounds too on the pro side, although Cami Granato in particular, I think, is pretty deeply involved in sort of a player personnel role, a classic, making sure that the amateur and the pro sides are talking. I do think she was deeply involved in vetting and evaluating sort of the strategic direction that the club needs to go. And I do think that's substantively why we've seen some changes today. The industry reaction, to be totally honest with you, gentlemen, is that there was sort of an expectation that there might be more significant changes than just 4 names. To this point, that's what's happened. I do think we're going to see significant additions. I do think we're going to see some of the people who were kept on reassigned internally. I do think there's going to be people moved around in terms of their area of sort of scouting expertise. There's going to be some additional changes. I'm not expecting, however, significant changes on the pro side. We might see a body added, but I don't think we're going to see a relatively small pro side staff change significantly before the offseason. So this might sort of be it in advance of meetings. I know that the club, wanted to make sure that these moves were done as early as possible so that some of these gentlemen, loyal, good, hardworking scouts have an opportunity to land on their feet. And I don't see this necessarily as a reflection of ability so much as a desire to significantly alter how the club scouting operations function. That sort of led us to today and the dismissal of 4 scouts, including some relatively senior members of Vancouver's amateur scouting operation.
First time we've had you on this week, Thomas. Were you okay with Jim Rutherford publicly calling out the Canucks zone exits, their structure, and dependency on Thatcher Demko, clearly taking a look at the head coach there?
I mean, I appreciate that Jim Rutherford saw what I saw, right? I mean, I was watching this team win games and I was saying this isn't a sustainable way of winning. And I'm glad that, the standards of the people in charge are at that level now, finally. Right? How often is this organization just sort of pointed to the one piece of good news and said, hey, look at that. Don't be negative. Finally, there's a standard. There's high standards for this organization. Now, all of that said, I don't think that should undo or in any way contradict the estimation that we should all quite reasonably have for the job that Bruce Boudreau did here, right? I mean, Bruce Boudreau's job is to win games. He did that and more. He won far more games than anyone should have reasonably expected, certainly than I reasonably expected. That was a tremendous bit of work by the head coach. But I do think when you look at how that club won games, they need more. They need a lot more talent. They do need a different approach, in my view. There were things at 5-on-5 that I was certainly worried about. There's matchup discipline stuff. There's, the way that they got burned pretty regularly off of set plays, off of faceoffs. There were a few things that sort of concerned me. I just think that Boudreau manages to do so well because in a pretty conservative league, he always attacks, right? He's so aggressive in terms of how his teams apply pressure. And I think because he knows one big thing and is sort of the master at it, he gets incredible results in a relatively conservative league, even if there might be some loose change that, ideally you'd be able to combine the two. So, I was curious to hear the comments. I thought it showed a lot of gumption. I thought it showed a discipline and directness, both in terms of the communication style, but also of focus. This is an organization that's not just going to sort of accept wins and losses the way Rick does and be like, look at the record. They're going to try and win something major. They're going to try and win sustainably. And for me, that's music to my ears, even if clearly there's some risk that they're taking on in this approach. And that risk starts with, a clear willingness to replace Bruce Boudreau should he decide to exercise his option before June 1st.
Yeah, but there's also a risk in keeping Boudreau, right? Given the
Absolutely.
numbers. But do you expect him to return?
I think the longer this plays out, Donnie, the less likely it is that he returns. That's my expectation at this point. If we're having the same conversation, the will he or won't he, a week from now, I'm going to feel like it's more likely that he departs than I do today. And likewise for the week after that. So this is now a holding pattern kind of situation. Boudreau has the contractual rights to wait 22, 23 days to make his decision. There could be some vacancies that open up depending on the results in this first round. So, clearly as this plays out and if this extends, Boudreau is using the leverage that he has. And I think the longer he does so, the less likely it is that he returns. And I do think that reflects, the sentiment internally too. But clearly by taking the approach that they've taken, there's a willingness to replace him.
Let's move over to Trent Cull in Abbotsford. Thomas, your thoughts on if he's going to be back over the weekend, first-round playoff exit, Klimovich, Jet Wu's playing it forward. I was talking to Patrik Johnson yesterday. He had some numbers that Jack Rathbone did not get a ton of ice time over the weekend. That's your number one prospect down there. Your thoughts on Abbotsford, and when they look at Abbotsford, do you see changes?
I would say that the 4-game losing streak to end the year, right, which cost them home dates across the board and then saw them exit the playoffs without a win, certainly increases the temperature on everyone involved's seat. That starts with Trent Cull for sure. And, I won't be surprised to see changes, especially when you consider the ambition that Jim Rutherford laid out for this club in Abbotsford, right? It's not to win games. It's not to develop players. It's not to, generate revenue or build the brand out in the Fraser Valley. It's to be the best in the AHL. That's a pretty high standard, gentlemen. And 4 straight losses to end the year, costing yourself playoff home dates and ultimately leaving the playoff. I'm not going to say they had a playoff run. They had a playoff jog, perhaps, without a win. That doesn't square certainly with the ambition that Rutherford laid out. At this point, I don't think it would be a huge shock to see, changes down there. And, you sort of ran through the gamut of fan complaints, but, going back a while, there's been a particular issue, it seems, with really developing and getting the most out of European-based prospects that have come to this organization. I mean, Nikolai Goldobin at least played a lot when he was down in the AHL, but you think about the Jonathan Dahlin experience. You think about
Petrus Palmu.
Petrus Palmu. Well, of course, you're going to bring that one up.
Just stop.
No, you're right. You're right. Petrus Palmu for sure. But even through this season with Karol Plasik, right, who only got into 8 games, Danila Klimovich, And then you think about how Allvin and company have made recruiting European free agents such a crucial plank of their vision to improve this organization's depth. At the very least, some tough questions have to be asked about why has this been a recurring issue for this organization across, the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Is it my turn?
Yeah, go ahead.
You just kind of stopped.
Well,
there.
he's been ripping me the whole Drance. You wait. I'm going to call you. I'm going to call you.
Petrus Palmu all the time. Petrus Palmu's your favorite prospect.
They cut him because he did
You're right.
He did a radio interview where he ripped Utica after leaving, and they never, ever, ever brought the kid back because of that radio interview. Thomas, that's the truth, and you know it.
Fair enough. I'm just saying I was searching for the name, and you were right on it. You were right on it.
And you're tight. And you're tight with his agent Todd Diamond. I know that.
We're wasting valuable time here with Thomas talking about Petrus Palmu.
Oh, I know.
I'm sorry.
I know. Let's go.
Hey, what's in JT? Very quickly, what's in JT Miller's future?
Well, we'll see. It's I mean, again, Rutherford's commentary, right?
Yes.
When you sign a guy at this age, his age 30 seasons. Here's what I love, gentlemen. Rutherford is sort of breaking down the risk and the stakes of the deal, as opposed to, leaning into the old hockey bromides, right? When you consider his leadership and his value and how well he takes care of himself, there's a clear-eyed recognition of the risk, as opposed to pointing to all the reasons that JT Miller could be one of the 2% of players who maintains their effectiveness to the age of 36, right? I love that. I'm just so relieved to have conversations around these players and around these issues that the team is working through that are grounded in reality, as opposed to being grounded in comparisons to Hall of Fame bound players, right? Mm-hmm. You can say the name Joe Pavelski and point out his age, but that doesn't make JT Miller Joe Pavelski. We need to ground those conversations in reality. And I think over the course of this week, we got a clinic from Canucks management, a willingness to do so again, to restore sanity to our hockey conversation in this marketplace. And I'm just appreciative of it. We've spent years talking about things like cupboards and meaningful games in March, as if either matters, right? As if the state of a prospect system is untethered to the ambitions or the current goals of a club, as if the players on your roster can't be used to restock cupboards should they be managed correctly. We've had all these conversations that were based off of, I don't want to pleasant lies, like comfortable lies, as opposed to the truth, the reality of the situation. And in the discussion around JT Miller, the recognition of the risks, the idea that if the numbers get out of whack and aren't, functional for the team, that the club's going to have to make an unemotional decision.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. Sanity. It's sanity. And I'm just grateful for it. Honestly, I'm grateful for it. If that's the type of, reality-based process that the club uses to make decisions going forward, they're going to make better decisions. Now, what does that mean for JT Miller specifically? I think it means that the club would love to keep him, but is going to do so, with a recognition that this is going to be a risky deal. It's not going to start until he's 30 years old. He's never been a point producer of this magnitude before. Will he sustain that? Can you bet on it now? There are some very tricky questions to work through. And obviously on Miller's side, and I thought Bartlett made it pretty clear when he appeared with you guys on the show, obviously the priority is to get a deal done now in the wake of a career season. So how do the two sides work through it? It's going to be complicated. It's going to be touchy. I'm not going to necessarily make a guess just yet, but I do think from a Canucks fan perspective, it's really important and good news that the club is at least making these decisions based off of some internal logic that seems sensible, rational, and defensible, as opposed to what we've seen for much of the past decade from this organization.
And one more thing on Petrus Palmu. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Sure.
Stop right there. Time out. Thomas, thanks for this. We'll talk to you next Friday. Appreciate it, my friend.
Sounds good. I'll be back next week for the Palmu report.
We look forward to it. We'll have a graphic built for you.